This is your host Rob for Black Mind State. As you know, guys, we like to do sit-down interviews, one-to-ones every now and then, and really discover about people's journey. So today I'm joined by Romain. Romain
Mohammed.
I fumble names, so
That's
I might
cool.
say Romain Mohammed.
Romain, yeah.
So of course, you are the founder of Diversify, the agency,
Yep.
And that focuses on building exclusivity from people from all backgrounds, and most specifically in the workplace as well.
Yep.
And you're also a researcher
Mm-hmm.
and I would say a recruiter and a academic scholar. Do you like that one, academic scholar?
Yeah.
I figured that out myself, academic scholar, because you'll be obviously releasing a book later on this year, which we'll be talking about.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be discussing all these things in length. So before we get into the sort of more professional side of things, I just want to know a little bit about you. You know, where you was born, what it was like growing up, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, cool, man. So my name is Romain Mohammed. Used to be Romain Stewart.
Okay.
Yeah. So I reverted to Islam.
Okay.
When I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
So it was back 2008, I think it was.
What led you to revert?
Man, so many. I think it was identity. So looking for identity, looking for belonging.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very, very big on history when I was growing up. I was very, very big on my own trying to find where I sat in this world. I think growing up, I had, my grandma, my mum were very, very influential in my life. Mm. They were influential in my socialization, and they kind of led me into this soul searching, identity, belonging searching mission. And yeah, where it stopped, I wouldn't say even stopped. I said where it led me was to Islam. And I'll give you a few examples. I remember being about 7 years old, my 7th birthday, and my mum bought me a CD player.
Okay.
And the song she bought me wasn't just any song. It was Tupac Changes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if, I'm sure viewers, everyone has heard Tupac Changes, but it's a very, very political, social type of song which touches on a number of different issues, be it, political issues, economic issues, social issues, foreign policy, wars, poverty, teenage pregnancy, all different type of issues that kind of plague our society, Tupac's touching on. So as a 7-year-old child listening to that, it made me look at my own surroundings, where I grew up, my own sort of life, and kind of really question, think like, wow, like, what is this stuff that this guy is saying, and how come it resonates with me at 7 years old? I remember little things like growing up in a Caribbean household. My grandma had usually Caribbean households, there's a picture of the Last Supper. Mm-hmm. My grandma had a picture of Martin Luther King. Okay. So those were the type of things that I was being socialized and seeing on a day-to-day basis when I go to my grandma's. Little things like she used to make me watch Western movies with her. Mm-hmm. And on the surface, it might just be, oh, that's just a Western movie, it's just a film. Cowboys and, thieves, etc. But those films had political, social issues such as colonialism or forced land appropriation, resource appropriation, the bad and the concept of the bad and the good, the concept of the noble savage concepts of the white man's burden. So many concepts that where I later found that are actual concepts related to history, related to colonialism, etc., etc. I was watching in these films when I was a young kid. Do you know what I'm saying? Cricket was a sense of national pride watching the West Indies. Mm-hmm. That was national pride for my grandma growing up in the household. It wasn't football. It wasn't watching England. It was watching West Indies. Mm. So there was my way I grew up was such that it shaped my kind of journey and looking for, okay, where do I fit? Who am I? I researched in Black history, researching African history. And the more I researched, I was finding Islam. I was looking for, researching about people like Mansa Musa, the Songhai Empire, ancient Ghana, ancient Mali Empire, etc. That's what I was finding. And it was like I was looking, it was almost like there's an author called Samuel P. Huntington. He's got a book called The Clash of the Civilizations. And it's like almost East against West. And because of my identity, I was looking for something which was anti-West, because I felt like the West had so much type of oppression, etc., etc. And I was looking to find something which wasn't that. if that makes sense.
Just to go back a bit then. So for, you say your influences are sort of your mother, your grandmother, etc. So on the conversation I have with a lot of different people, like males, sort of our age and younger, the lack of identity to some degree always comes from, you can correct me if I'm wrong, some disconnect with father figures and male figures. Would you say that's
100%. Well? I think 100%. My dad was around, but not around in that sense.
So around but not present.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I almost felt like there were people like Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, people like that, Louis Farrakhan, controversial names I know, but those were the people who I saw filling that father figure void, and they were the first kind of representatives of what black masculinity and black manhood looked like and should look like to me.
So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. So masculinity is a thing that I like to speak about in great depth, and it's a topic which is quite relevant now. And obviously there's this idea of, toxically masculine, which is, I have my own thoughts about that, but this isn't about me. So, I mean, in the time because I'm imagining you're similar sort of age to me. So growing up at your sort of time, what was true masculinity then, and how would you define it? And would you define true masculinity now? And are they the same things? I told you said I could ask you anything, man. Here we go.
We're only like 10 minutes.
There we go. Get ready, man. Get ready.
Wow. So true masculinity then was reflections of people, as far as I'm concerned, it was reflections of people like Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, people who were outspoken, who were very outspoken in a good way. I think the term outspoken could be, there's sometimes negative
like
connotation. Yeah, that's the negative connotation attached. And I think because we're looking at it through a postmodern type of lens. But back then, being outspoken was you were firm on justice, firm on equality, firm on, doing the right thing, firm on principles, morals, ethics, things like that. You would lead from the front. You were a man. You would be the provider, the protector. You were the person. Now, I think those things are very convoluted in a sense.
Let me help you out here.
Go on. Yeah.
So obviously the world has changed, and I'm an equalityist, I think, or feminist, sure. As most people know me. However, but I think the roles have changed, and I think sometimes these things that you've described, standing on your principles, being a protector, being a provider, these things don't go away. But we live in a modern world where people see that in a certain type of way, and I think it's also because they're not used to it. Generationally and culturally, at the moment, there is a lot of different understandings of what true masculinity is.
Yeah.
I think it's difficult. I had a interview. Well, it wasn't an interview, so it was it was a sit-down interview, but someone was interviewing me, and I was talking about masculinity, and I was saying about a woman can't tell my son how to be a man. I think
I saw that.
Right? Okay. And that went crazy. But that went crazy. People
I agree with it. I agree with it, and I'm going to echo what you said.
Yeah.
I think even from my own perspective, my own upbringing, there was only so much my mum, salute my mum. My mum was amazing. That's my queen. Honestly, that's my queen and my grandma. But there was only certain, and even now, they're the only two people that I would probably listen to. Outside of, they're the only people that I listen to. If they said to me, don't do this or don't do that, they're the only two people I listen, because that's how I hold them in such regard in that sense. But as an adolescent, as a teenager, they couldn't teach me how, and they can't teach me how to be a man. I think only a man can teach another man how to be another man. I remember there's a short anecdote I'm going to give you. When I was 16, I was in secondary school, year 11, and for whatever reason, I decided to use a razor to shave.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had to use a razor. I didn't know what I was doing. I just found one of my mum's razors and used it. First day, it was smooth. The skin was smooth. Smooth. The next day, it started itching. The next day, it started itching even more. And then, as the days went on, shaving bumps came, ingrown hairs, etc., to the point where it was just, I had to go to the shop and buy all these type of things to kind of get rid of the whatever. And it took about 2-3 weeks till I was back to normal. But my point is, if I had, and that's just a small example of what I mean by a man teaching another man how to be a man. It's a small kind of superficial level example of what I mean, wherein if I had a man in my life at that particular time that could tell me, Brethren, what are you doing? You're not supposed to use a razor. You're supposed to use something else, because I hear we can't use razors like that. Do you know what I mean? Because our hair is sort of Afro hair is what it is. So we need to use different type of things to shave. But I never had that. So I had to go and learn myself. And I think a lot of it has been, for me especially for, you know, a lot of us who maybe don't have our fathers around, don't have father figures, a lot of it tends to be this trial and error type of narrative where we have to go out into the world and learn things by ourselves.
I think this is why it goes into, I know it sounds like a bit of a negative connotation, but when I talk about with people about gangs, you got to remember the importance of brotherhood.
Exactly.
I think that's what gangs are about. Obviously, the negative aside, especially young men, they want to feel around like brothers,
family,
family.
brothers. Yeah.
It's all based around that. So it's not from a, you know, a heartless place.
No.
They're lost. A lot of people are lost.
And again, it's that growing up in a fatherless or male role model-less household, those gangs and the olders, quote unquote, in those gangs, the older guys in those gangs, those are some of the kind of first representations of, or initial representations of manhood that some of these young boys see. You know, they see the cars and the money, maybe the respect, the clout, etc. And that seems like what power and authority and influence is supposed to be. That's what it replicates. And they gravitate towards it. Do you know what I mean? They gravitate
I think one of the biggest things as well is, it's funny you're saying about respect is one of them as well. I think respect is probably the only measurement or only emotion, I don't know how you describe it, it's the only read of where a man will actually kill someone over a disrespect.
Yeah.
And that's the weight that it has.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you don't, like, I have this thing where I was talking to someone else before and I said, that guy's never been punched in the face, meaning he doesn't know what about the potency of disrespect to another person, right? But the only person that we go back to can teach you that is probably another man, the weight of respect and how it can have, you know, life-threatening consequences.
And I think when you look at specific communities, the masculine energy, the man in specific communities is still there, it's still present. If that makes sense, in certain communities, the man is still present, and the weight of the man and his role and his responsibility is what it's currently what it is now. It's still what it was back then.
See, and that's the problem. That's why there's a lot of disconnect, because some people think that those traditional masculine values, like to the provider, you know, when it comes to dating, I want the guy to earn more money than me, etc., etc., etc. But then it's also just like a disconnect of, okay, but this is what comes with it.
100%.
I think people always very pick and mixy, and life doesn't work like that.
100%. And there's, even when we look at the black community, there are particular theories around, not just in the UK, but in America, destabilization of the black family. When we look at things, they say that, you know, and they say that, you know, social housing and social security actually took away, why it's a good thing on one sense, it disrupted the black family, because the woman now, the man was, the state was the man, and she had no need for the man.
The government should daddy. The government should daddy.
And even when we look at things, and it's true, and when we look at things around, okay, even the rearing of children, where the state is allowed to incarcerate your child, the state is allowed to discipline your child, but you can't discipline your child. You can't discipline your child to the point where he or she's disciplined enough that the state don't need to get involved. But what it's told that you shouldn't discipline your child, but the state can discipline you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to discipline your child.
So it's become a replacement.
A replacement, yeah. And you can't, preventative measures that our grandparents and our parents would have took with us that could have stopped that, we're not allowed to do. Yeah. Does that make sense? So there's no prevention, just what they would see as the solution.
So would you say that's one of the biggest causes of the breakdown of the black family, in particular the black nuclear family?
The social setting.
And the government involvement.
Yeah.
Because I know in America it's slightly different, but we have a similar sort of issue, because being a single mum is financially more beneficial than sometimes having a man in the household. Yeah,
I'd say so. I say it's a mixture of different things, man. It's hot in there, isn't it? It's bloody hell. I'd say it's a mixture of different things, though. I would say there's the current setting of society, the current setting of government, so social, etc. But I say it's deeper than that as well. I'd say that there's a lot of things that when you see things are way on the surface, there's always an explanation as to why that those things are like that. When we look at, for example, slavery, and I know a lot of people like to say, oh, but that's 400 years ago, or that. It doesn't matter. There's something called generational trauma. There's something called epigenetics, where there's where it's trauma that's so deep rooted within and that it can actually be passed down through DNA. Okay, so if you were on a plantation or during slavery, and you were like, there was particular situations where, and this was widespread, and this is actually documented, where black men were used for breeding. Okay, you've heard that, yeah? Black men were used for breeding, and only for breeding, and there was a breakdown of the black family back then. Okay, and you were just told to breed. You almost like a stud, almost like a factory type of horse. Yeah, exactly. In that sense. So when we look at it, and we look at how, that's been drilled into you over generations, we can see the kind of effects of that today. So there is that, and there is instances around. I remember when I was growing up with my grandparents, for example, and the grandparents' generation, there was a lot more of a situation of marriage and staying together. I think that's changed fundamentally now, and we don't see that so much now. So I think there's a loads of different things. It's historical, but also there's current social and economic situations as well, i.e. the government, etc.
Yeah, so to pull it back a little bit, we spoke about your upbringing and then went into masculinity and had some fun with that.
Yeah, man.
But so, you as a young man, what you do now is essentially make sure people, talented people are getting the roles that they deserve, regardless of race and gender, etc. But before we go on to that, I want to know about you individually. So what would you say, do you have a recollection of your first experience with racism, and what was it, and how did it come about?
Yeah, I was speaking about this the other day as well, actually. I think we grew up in a time in the 90s, yeah? So we grew up in a time where, especially in London, multicultural London, or the illusion of multicultural London.
It's an illusion? Yeah. Why is it an illusion?
We'll get onto that after. We'll get onto that after this guy. But we'll get onto that after. But the illusion of multicultural London and, or multicultural Britain, I should say.
Okay.
The illusion of multicultural Britain, and also the illusion of political correctness, okay? We grew up in that particular time, the advent of that. So when we grew up in that time, you didn't see racism became a lot more institutional, systemic and systematic, okay? So whereas in the 70s and the 80s, there was instances where, elders that I know would be walking down the street and police would
make comments.
Exactly, people would make comments. Yeah, people would pull them over under the sus laws, which are a modern stop and search. Yeah, but it was a modern adaptation of something called the Vagrancy Act, where police could stop and search anyone just based on suspicion of a crime.
Okay.
And that particular instance criminalized generations of black men in the UK. So that was it. That back then, when we were growing up in the 90s, it wasn't so much that, it was more institutional. Okay, so now can I give you one example?
Sure.
Can't remember what I was doing. I think I was in year 10, year 5, not year 10, year 5 or year 6, and there was a school called Latimer School in Edmonton.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm thinking of one, but go on.
But it wasn't a private school, but it was like a school where you had to do a test.
Yeah.
To get in.
I know that. Yeah, there's another one in West, I think, as well.
Where you from? West.
West, yeah.
Oh,
there's another one in West. I think there's one in Hammersmith.
Probably. Yeah. There was a girls' school called Queen Elizabeth Girls that is like that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, quite a few of them. Where you have to do a test to get in.
Yeah.
And I was 10 or 11. I wanted to go, but deep down, I didn't believe that I'd get in.
Why?
You told me. I don't know. Yeah. No one had told me that I won't get in. No one had told me that I'm not good enough to get in. No one had told me I'm not smart enough to get in. But there was a level of imposter syndrome, even at 10, even at 10, 11, a level of self-doubt at 10, 11 that told me I weren't getting in and I weren't good enough to go. And I remember being in my class, and I can't remember what I was doing. You're just a 10, 11-year-old kid, probably talking with your friends. And I remember I had a teacher, and South African teacher, and she said to me, it's like shouting at me, going mad. I don't know if she had a bad day. I don't know what happened at home the night before. If she had a bad day in the morning. I don't know what happened to her. She's like shouting, going in. You're never going to get in. And you can forget about going to Latimer. And that school, the school that I went to was in Tottenham. It was a school, predominantly of people from quote unquote global majority backgrounds. That's the term that we use now and that's replaced BAME. Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. Yeah, that's the term. Replace BAME, global majority. So that was a school majority people were from global majority backgrounds. And that's what she said to me. And I think from a perspective of being a teacher in a primary school in an area which is deprived area, with high social issues and high people, a large majority of people from specific backgrounds, you have to be very culturally sensitive how you deal with children, how you speak to children, especially in those instances. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I just feel like sometimes the teachers that they have in certain schools aren't very culturally sensitive and cultural aware. There's something called cultural diplomacy. I don't think they understand that because that just
shaped them.
You would shape them, and that just ruined my confidence and really made me what I did internalize and feel before she said that just confirmed it for me. So I remember going to the school, doing the test, and almost failing on purpose because I'd rather fail on purpose because then at least I could justify my failure.
Yeah.
Whereas if I try my hardest and I don't get in, then I've just tried my hardest. Does that make sense? And that's how I was thinking.
And then that goes to the thing of like, okay, you won't get in because you're not good enough,
right?
And you failed, and even you tried your hardest and you still failed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. I do get it. I think when I was growing up, my schooling situation is a little bit different, but I was told that, well, if he can do it, you can do it as well. But I know a lot of people don't have that kind of self-encouragement or confidence. It's led me to the confidence I have today from that. But yeah, being in a school where someone who's an adult, who's supposed to be shaping young minds, as they say, and stuff like that.
And you find that that wasn't the only instance. You find that in secondary school. I remember my secondary school was amazing. But there was certain, but I think that there's a specific type of student, young people that go to specific type of schools, and I think that more needs to be done to make sure that, or to ensure that they have a level of representation that they can relate to in those schools.
Yeah,
I get there's maybe a lack of teachers, not a lot of teachers, or lack of teachers from specific backgrounds. I get that, but more should be done that can promote, whether it's other organizations, even if it's someone like me going into the schools to speak to young people in the schools because they can understand me and I can understand them. I recently went to a school in Enfield recently, Oasis Hadley Academy, done a talk during Black History Month, and it was amazing. And I can remember myself sitting in there. There were sixth form students, year 12s, and I can remember myself sitting there. Only how long ago was that now? 18, I'm 31. Over 10 years ago, showing my age, but still, thought it went really quick, man. I can't believe it. But I remember myself sitting in that, in those chairs, and just thinking, Rod, you know what? Like, I wish I had someone like me speaking to them. Sorry, someone like me speaking to me at that time, because the level of conversation that you can have is just different. Like people, especially in London and all the other cities, all the major cities where there's a high proportion of people from global majority communities.
It's funny because sorry to interrupt you, but it's funny because you say that as well, and it's like even I do it, meaning like, oh yeah, I get him. I'll be somewhere like a workplace. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about this later, but in a workplace, sometimes there'll be people working there. I'll be like, oh yeah, he's alright. He's ends. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm like, he's like an ends. He's an ends manager, and it makes you feel comfortable
100%
straight away. And I know, it shouldn't be like that, but and that's people who are, white or black or whatever. But even like if I'm at a workplace and there's a white guy there, I'm like, oh yeah, he gets it. He ends. He's been around black people. And you know what I mean? There's certain things which they pick up with where you work with people who are so displaced from, they don't really. And sometimes this is when we talk about like ignorant comments sometimes, but they don't really know what, like microaggressions, I guess. They don't really realize what they're doing, but that's not an excuse.
No, it's exactly.
But it's
and you're just saying that we shouldn't be like that in terms of gravitating to people that you have a sense of identity and belonging to. But everyone does that.
Yeah.
Every culture, class, race, ethnicity, language, people that speak the same language will do it. And even when you look at within specific cultures, for example, or races or ethnic groups, for example, if you talk about black people, within the race, black people or black, there's a number of different nuances within that. So people that are from the same country will group together. People that speak the same language will group together. People that are from the same religion will group together. So within the, overarching whatever group it is, there are nuances within that particular group where people stick together and will unite and will come together. I don't think it's a bad thing per se, because it's just how us human beings are. I think what's a bad thing is when, there's a level of ignorance and ignorant comments, like you mentioned about microaggressions, when you're in the professional world and the working environment. I think that breeds a level of bias, doesn't it? It breeds a level of misunderstanding, and it can breed a level of creating a situation where there's a lack of inclusion, a lack of equity as well. And I think that was one of the reasons why I set up Diversify, because I had been working in professional spaces for about 10 years. And
what was that like? What did you experience there? And was there stuff where you're like, would you be like, that's a little bit off, Sandra? Like, kind of thing, do you know what I mean? Or like, oh, I don't know everything to say that, Sandra. That's a bit mad. Or was it just like, it's okay, well, it's a bit weird.
Like I said, from my upbringing, I was always hypersensitive about comment stuff and my position, etc., etc. And it's funny because there was an ITV study recently that I was a part of, and it was called the Black Voices Project. And one of the statistics was that, I might be misquoting, but it was around, I'm not going to say the exact statistic, but it was a large proportion of the participants in the survey felt like they had to leave a part of themselves.
Oh, do you remember? There's like almost like a work persona. They call it something.
You got your work,
But there's a specific word, I can't remember what it's called. It's essentially like almost, let's say your work face, work behavior.
Exactly. So you got to leave a part of you at the door. Okay, and I felt that. I felt that to the point where there were times where I was doing things and I was a certain way that wasn't who I actually was, just to fit in, just to fit in with the crowd and just to be accepted and I thought it was cool. I thought that was what, and this is a grown man saying this, do you know what I mean? And feeling like this. And I almost feel like I lost myself for a particular period of time. I think there was two things that saved me. One was COVID, because I was forced to work from home and forced to confront myself and who I actually was. And the funny thing as well with life is life always has a way of waking you up and bringing you back to that which you were supposed to be doing. Yeah, regardless of how long it takes, regardless of what brings you back there, but life will bring you back to what you were supposed to be doing or who you really are. Okay, whether it's a catastrophic event, whether it's just time, whether it's whatever it is, you'll be who you're supposed to be. Because if you were supposed to be that person, and I feel like based on where I was when I was 7 years old, listening to those type of songs and really resonating with it, and then now doing what I'm doing now, and the journey in between, I've definitely seen that kind of full 360 full circle of life bringing me back to where I'm supposed to be now. But yeah, I would say when people ask me, how did you start Diversify? What was the main thing? How did it come about? Well, there's trends and triggers. The trigger was working in the professional environment. And don't get me wrong, I had great experience. I met a lot of people. I done okay from it financially. And I wouldn't have changed it. But I would say the trend was being socialized from a young age to be very hyper aware, to be very hypersensitive, to question, to look for the truth, to try and seek, different ways of doing things, different ways of thinking, to try and seek identity, to try and seek belonging. Don't just be concerned or satisfied with the status quo. Look think that's how I was socialized. And it's funny because when I bring these things up to, just going back a bit, when I bring these things up to my mom, my grandma, or family members, they don't even know what they did. And that's the beauty of it. When something's so natural, when something is almost God ordained, that nothing can stop it, nothing can get in the way of it, and people don't even know what they're doing. And that's why I say that as adults, as elders, we have to be very careful about, one, how we portray ourselves and how we come out and show up to the world, and B, two. So I said, one, how we show up, etc., and two, how we are around children and young people. If we've got our own children, or if we've got nephews, nieces, cousins, younger people, or we're just working around younger people, or even how we are just in society, we need to be very, very careful, because something so small that we're not even conscious of doing or saying can have an effect on that person. And like I said, I'm a testament to that. Whereas my parents, my family, etc., my mum, my aunties, taking me to the museums and all these type of things, they didn't know what they were doing. Maybe they were just doing it because it was free, or they were just doing it because they thought I might like it, or they was just doing it because they wanted to see it, etc. But for me, that was a huge life-changing thing. So yeah, we've got to be really careful on how we come out and into the world, and show up, man.
And with
Seriously.
Diversify,
Yeah.
You work a lot with companies and employers, and to build and show them how they can be I suppose, actually, let me not butcher this, but my understanding is what you do is you educate companies on how to be inclusive for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, kind of. You can go into more depth, but essentially a bit of.
I'm gonna remix it a little bit.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, of course. So with that in mind, what are the biggest hurdles that they're facing? Companies. You don't have to name companies. You don't have to be like, Google and this person, and they're awful. Don't work for them or whatever. But you know, what are you finding? Is it a case of ignorance, or is it a case of like, oh, I just didn't even think about that? Like, I know one of the things that came up was facilities for Muslims, like prayer rooms, etc., or organising alternative events which aren't drink based, things like that. So, what are they finding? What are the, because I've read your form of like, from a company submitting it. It's a long form, man. I'm not gonna lie, very detailed. You know, if you want to come in and speak to them about microaggressions, or if you're an employee or an employer, it's very extensive. And I'm like, hold on,
the survey.
Yeah, and I was like, hold on, I think that's happened to me, you know. I'm like, hold on, let me go speak to my man. No, but it's it depends. It's stuff that I haven't even thought about, and I was like, oh wow, like I'm sure I've had an instance like that.
We probably all have had instances like that, but we may have brushed over them, or it just might have gone over our head, or we may have just chose to ignore it. We've probably all had instances where we've been made to feel uncomfortable, or we've been reminded of our otherness. Yeah, we all had instances. But just to backtrack a bit, just to remix your slight butchering of
please do.
No, it was actually a decent attempt. But yeah, so Diversify is an agency or consultancy, or agency and consultancy that aims at bridging the gap for marginalised and underrepresented communities in the professional world.
It's better you said that.
Yeah. But you know, it's been practice, man.
Yeah.
Practice. I remember when I first set Diversify up, it was something completely different. The aim was the same, but something completely different. And I could never have just said it in a sentence.
No, bite size.
Yeah. I could never have said it, because that's the thing with time. Time crystallizes everything. Ideas, dreams, whatever it is. Time is the biggest thing that helps you go from not being able to say what you do to being able to say what you do in a short snapshot. So yeah, man, salute time, big up time. But yeah, so that's what we do. And we do that through by helping companies, empowering companies to build diverse teams.
Okay.
And then create inclusive environments. And then by doing those two things, will help to enable them to unlock innovation.
So by that point of the recruitment side of it, because I know you've got a background in recruitment, what is it that they're finding difficult from that as well?
From the recruitment piece?
From the recruitment process, yeah.
So to find diverse talent, talent from diverse backgrounds, to engage diverse talent,
Okay.
and then to retain diverse talent.
So can you give me an example of how they would do that in those three instances? Engage and rate.
Yeah, so initially they'd work with a company like mine, myself, like me, my company, whose primary goal, primary focus is to work with these organizations to help them find diverse talent. That's my primary goal. That's what I do. It's not an afterthought. It's not like a company. I've heard agencies say some ridiculous, crazy things like, "Oh, we want to productize DEI." So DEI.
I don't know what any of those words.
Okay, so DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion, or EDI.
Yeah.
Those are the acronyms for it. Yeah, but we want to productize it, i.e., we want to make it a product. So you want to turn diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are essentially your human right to be taken as you want to productize that. That's what they're saying. And it's like some agencies and consultancies. So they're set up as it's an afterthought for them. Whereas for me, this is lived experience, primary, and it's, like I said, stuff that I was interested in and exposed to from a 7-year-old child. So this runs deep for me. So it'd be for companies to work with someone like myself, whose primary focus is that, and it'll be for me to go into the market, to look into the market and find what they're looking for. And it's not just and some companies would say, okay, well, it doesn't exist. We can't find you a whatever type of a black woman or a South Asian woman or a South Asian man in a particular skill set, particular background for a particular salary. We can't find that for you. In the world of data-driven businesses, that isn't good enough. That explanation or that reason for not being able to find that person is not good enough. You need to provide statistics and data to back up why you can't find that person. It might be that you can't find no one in that particular area. It might be that the salary's a bit off, but it needs to be outlined to the organization.
But then what stops it from filling a quota? To some degree, Because outside of the sort of, I suppose, employee history or your career history, if you're factoring in race, age, gender, for example, and they're looking, okay, we have to, like you said a bit earlier, it's like, oh, well, we want to get in 2 black women on our company, 1 Asian guy, etc., etc. So if they're going with that goal in mind, isn't that
quota? Yeah, 100%.
But is that a negative or?
It's a start
because it sounds like, I don't want to make a thing of this, but almost like the affirmative action of it. So my thing is that, of course, you're going to be hiring people on their skill set, but if you're including race and gender as you are, isn't that corrupting it a little bit to some degree?
What do you mean?
So meaning that obviously we know the world's not equal, we know life isn't fair, etc. But if you have 2 CVs and they both have the same experience, and we're factoring in race and gender, and like now, for example, I'm seeing a lot of stuff saying, oh, like, we are a female-led company, we empower women. Isn't that bias? Isn't it a similar sort of thing?
No, it's a solution and a reaction to a problem that has been persisting in society for hundreds of years. It's a reaction. It's a solution. It's a solution company saying, actually, do you know what? We can get a different level of lived experience, an insight, culturally, mentally, etc., from women. So let's hire women. We need to hire more women. It can't be so male dominated.
But you see, male dominated in certain industries. What I'm seeing is that there's certain industries where someone will say there's not enough women in this industry. But usually the industries are high powering industries. So we're not shouting for more female bricklayers or more female plumbers, for example. So don't you think that's slightly the gap there is not, it should be across the board, no? But I think it's interesting that, of course, what we're lacking is the top paying jobs, you know? So
and it's not just the top paying, it's middle management. It's I focus on anyone in the sort of professional world. So it could be in the tech industry, financial services, legal. Those are the industries that kind of I focus on.
So what do you find in tech then? Like, what's the tech recruitment and the history and the kind of employees that they have there. And
I find within the tech space, there's a lack of women. There's a lack of women of color.
Okay.
In certain, especially senior roles.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of women of color. There's a lack of men of color in senior roles also.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on company as well.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on location, etc. If we just talk about the UK,
mm-hmm.
absolutely lack of women of color in specific roles, sort of middle management, senior roles, board level, and men as well. And that's why there's, companies are pouring millions into trying to attract, but also retain. One thing is attracting, and like you said, mentioned earlier, filling a quota. It might be filling a quota, but if it's just filling a quota and there's no genuine, heartfelt desire to change and almost decolonize the workplace and your company, then that will shine through because those people won't stay.
So talk to me about retention then.
Yeah. So retention is around.
How do you keep them?
So retention is around creating those spaces where these people feel wanted, comfortable, a part of, and they feel like they're not just in quote unquote sacred white spaces. Okay, those sacred white spaces are those spaces where you as a person of color will go in there and you're reminded of your otherness. You're reminded that you're a chance visitor, you're accidental, you're unlikely to be there. There's more chance for you to be caught up in the mental health or in the psychiatry mental health system or the prison system than you are to be in certain professional environments at a particular level. Being a person of color from London, from inner city community. Does that make sense? You're more likely to be on the wrong side of the law than be in those places. So and that's the perception. And retention is about companies, not just internally, but in wider society, being passionate and caring about trying to really, really, really change and make a difference. And there are some companies that are doing a lot, and it's not about just what you say, it's about what you're doing. Yeah, and it's like there's you walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Some companies are actually walking the walk and you can see that by the work that they're doing, the programs that they're doing, the fact that it's not just about hiring, it's about, okay, when they get here, leadership programs, talent accelerator programs, mentorship, reverse mentorship, things like different courses, workshops, seminars, consistently trying to do things to make these environments, people of color, people of different ethnic groups, diversity and inclusive friendly. And there are companies like that are doing that. So one thing is, recruiting the talent. And the second thing is actually when they're here, when we've got them, how do we make them stay? And that's a whole different type of solution that needs to be put in place.
Do you think, based on your experience, enough companies wouldn't be doing it, otherwise, they wouldn't. But would you say that you're seeing it more and more frequently? Because you've been running it for a couple of years now, the company. So are you seeing more and more just...
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more. I'm seeing, I think, ever since the whole George Floyd, Black Lives Matters campaign, it's globally, but especially in the US and the UK, that was the first time where you see whole roles created around the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Whole roles created. That was a time where some companies hired their first ever global head of diversity and inclusion. So companies have made it a priority. But then now you start seeing that the perception of diversity, equity, and inclusion is starting to change again, and companies are starting to cut. Companies are starting to cut global heads of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're starting to cut senior managers who are focusing on diversity and inclusion.
Why is that? What's
because I think what you've seen is, when over the last sort of 12 months, you've seen a lot of the fear of the looming recession. So specifically within the tech space, specifically within the tech space, companies, not just the diversity roles, but just technology roles as a whole. Companies were cutting. You had Facebook doing it, you had Twitter doing it, Salesforce, Google.
But Twitter, they were taking the mickey over in Twitter, man. They would. She's like, "This is my day. I'm gonna go and do yoga." I'm like,
companies literally who had been, people had been working for these companies for 10 years, 15 years, then realizing that the only way that they know that they've been fired is because their card access
that's
don't
wild.
work.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine
So,
this.
I know.
And then
No loyalty.
The security guy at
No
the end
loyalty.
goes, sorry, man. Like,
Yeah.
can't let you up, bro.
Yeah.
They told me.
Yeah. No loyalty.
Uncle on the
whatsoever.
desk knows before.
Uncle on the
Jesus.
desk knows before. He's probably got a list there of all
Damn,
the people.
don't let these guys up. Imagine. That's wild, man. I might have to kick off if I was in that situation.
100%.
I'm gonna lie, man.
No, 100%. And people, but I saw it on LinkedIn. People, really, really upset, man. Heartbroken because they've been with these companies since they graduated.
Yeah, but
there's a sentiment.
Do you think there's, the job for life aspect?
No,
is that a
that
boomer
doesn't
aspect,
exist.
No?
Sorry, a bloomer.
A boomer mindset.
A baby bloomer.
No, baby boomers, from our parents' generation.
Yeah, 100%.
They think like that.
100%.
Yeah,
and it's changed now.
Yeah.
And that's why when people say, us, our generation, and then the Gen Z.
Yeah, millennials, Gen Zs.
Yeah, millennial Gen Zs. I think one of the things about Gen Zs, and even millennials, there's different, in terms of some of the work, some of the things that we look for in work. But one of the things that is very, very similar to both of us is that we don't just stay in companies for the sake of staying in companies. Yeah, our allegiances and loyalties is to ourselves and our mental health.
I'm definitely seeing a lot more of that now.
Yeah, and our career progression.
Yeah,
and if we're going to be able to get a better opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah,
in another company. And there is also the push for entrepreneurship, self-employedness, flexible working, etc., etc. That whole career for life and going in the career ladder and working for a company and all that stuff. That's not.
That's done. That's been done for a while.
It's been done for a while.
I do think you get the kind of boomer versus the Gen Z saying, "Oh, you should come in early. If you do more work, they'll promote you." No. No.
But because you're seeing what happened. You're seeing what happens.
It's they're to finesse you.
Yeah.
They'll carry on finessing you.
And we're seeing that I've seen that live in the flesh on LinkedIn over the last year. Countless stories. People I know, people I don't know, but they're in my network. Long essays. Heartbroken. I'm like, boy,
the game.
That's the game.
You're like, the game's not based on sympathy.
It's not.
Do you know what I mean?
It's not. And you if you pass away, God forbid you pass away or something happens to you, they'll replace you next week.
Yeah. And I think the thing is as well, it's about COVID, obviously we spoke of, is something where the remote working prior to COVID, they're like, oh, you can't remote work, that's impossible, etc., etc. Remote working, flexible working. And I think myself and a few other people that I know, prior COVID, I would say around about that time, a lot of guys who I know who were kind of hitting that 30 aspect, they were very changing careers. So like, do I want to do this for the
rest of my life?
Yeah, 10, 15 years, and you just think differently. And it's like, do I want to be stable career wise, or do I want to be happy? You know what I mean? So,
and I think there's a push for people now to really focus on homing on that happiness.
Yeah.
The big job titles and the big companies and stuff like that. That's no longer the be all and end all.
Yeah. It's funny, we spoke about masculinity earlier, and I think one of the biggest...
You spoke about it.
Oh, no, you mentioned a few things there. You mentioned a few things there.
You just ran away with it, man.
Yeah.
No, I'm all good.
With that, so one of the things about masculinity, we talk about purpose and drive, etc. Those are kind of skills as well, or tools of masculinity, right? Or attributes, I should say. And when it comes to work, you want to feel like you have purpose in work. And I think sometimes people will probably feel like they go into work, they come home from work, they go into work, and it's like on a cycle.
Robotic type of cycle, right. Transactional.
And when you think about it, you've got, males have got the highest suicide rate, exactly.
Yeah.
And stuff like this, really, this is how a lot of guys get depressed. It usually starts with their wife leaving them or a job or etc. Right? So it's just, I think happiness in work is probably key. Obviously, you can't be like, oh, I don't want to do this because this doesn't. You still have to be practical. I'm sure you found itself. I will say one thing though about LinkedIn. In a minute, you mentioned an essay there. I'm finding it's become more like Facebook.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. And me personally, I don't really feel comfortable saying, oh, I went through this and job and this job and that job and and now and careers, and people don't need to know, bro. I'm trying to get hired. I don't want to tell them all that.
Do you know what I would say is that I think LinkedIn's changed.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was speaking about this with someone else recently. I think it might be yesterday that LinkedIn used to be. No, I was giving a talk on Friday in Nottingham at the Nottingham NHS Trust, and when I was connecting with some of the people that work for the trust, they were talking about Twitter, obviously it's X now, Twitter, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not really a Twitter guy. I don't really use Twitter that much.
I've seen your tweets. You've got like 6 tweets.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm a LinkedIn guy. I was like,
yeah.
do you have LinkedIn? They were like, no. We more use Twitter. So different industries, different. Obviously, they prefer different things. And I remember speaking to a lady there, and she was like, you know, their whole thing is around using Twitter, and they are kind of in the mindset that LinkedIn is only to be used when you're looking for a job. Obviously, we know it's not that. And it's not that. It's not just about looking for a job. I'm a recruiter. So if I'm going to hire Rob, I want to know what you're posting. If you are...
No, you don't.
You don't. No, I really do. Especially on platforms like LinkedIn. If you're I don't know, say you were a lawyer, for example, and you specialize in human rights law. Yeah. Or, I forget that example. Say you're a software engineer. You told me you're a senior software engineer.
Yeah.
As a recruiter, it's my role to do my due diligence. So I want to know how good you really are. Okay. Are you just saying you're good, or are you actually good? And the way I can tell that is by going onto your social media, and there's specific social media hubs or repositories or platforms for software developers, software engineers. One's called GitHub, the other one's called Slack Overflow, and I can go on it. Slack. You heard them, yeah? So I can go on it, and I can see how active you are in the community, how much you're posting, what you're doing, what you're saying. Are you an innovator? Because if you was a senior lead type position, you would be an innovator. Does that make sense? You would. I see what you mean. So LinkedIn is much more of a. It's more of a community to showcase, to connect, to speak, to network, to really become that thought leader in this space, rather than just going somewhere to get a job. And recruiters will judge you based on how active you are and what you're posting on LinkedIn. They'll judge you.
You're going to have to audit my LinkedIn.
I'm going to do it. I've already done it, man.
Audit it. Listen.
It's not looking, as the words...
It's not looking great, bruv. It's not looking good, bruv. It's not looking good, bruv.
It's not looking in the wise words of Castillo, it's not looking good, bruv.
That's it, man.
But your Instagram makes up for it, so...
Oh, well, again.
You know,
we're trying, man.
We're on par now, man.
So, I say go back, but let's just jump onto this one. This is what I want to speak to you about. This is more of a societal issue, I guess.
Oh, boy.
We spoke a little about education. Don't worry, it's not what you think. So, we spoke about race and a few other things like that. But in regards to class, when I think about class, do you think class has a bigger impact into sort of the workplace and society? Because I say that because if you look at, say, MPs, MPs are where they're at. I'm sure they've worked hard, but, you know, they've gone to the right school, or they're the right class, or they've known this person. That's why they're at Cambridge and Eton, etc., etc. So do you think that class plays a bigger role than we anticipate, especially in the UK?
Yeah.
Oh, short answer. No, because I say that as well. Because look, if we do the Thanos snap, and we say that everyone who has our backgrounds and who looks like us, male and female, all had private education and were all like middle to, I guess, up. Is it higher class? I don't know the class system now. Do you think that we'd have the same barriers that we have?
Yeah.
You think?
Yes, 100%. Because remember, when we look at race, the formation of race as we know it was formed in the late 17th century by people like Carl Linnaeus, John Frederick Blumenbach, and Francois Bernier. These were, and other people, Huxley. You had people like there's loads of people. Okay, but these were the people who were the fathers of something called pseudo-scientific racism, which was the justification of races and the classification of races based on science, hard science. That's what they would argue, and they would argue that there was multiple classifications of man or mankind: black, white, yellow, and red, or Mongoloid, Caucasoid, Negroid, or Ethiopian. Red is
Native American.
Yeah. Or East Indian, etc. Okay, and basically the white race was there to rule over everybody else, and in terms of skull, they used to do this. They used to do the measurements and for analysis by skull size. That the white race had the largest skulls, so they were the most enlightened, the most cultural, and most enlightened and civilized. And all the darker races, all the other races, had the smaller skulls, so they were the ones that were most savage and more barbaric and etc. 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 So the point is that race is about power, is about privilege, is about social class or society. It's a way to control other races.
Yeah, there's more power in divide and conquer.
Right.
We're seeing it right now.
So my point is that the very essence of race was set up by upper class or aristocratic upper class men, white men, to divide and rule over everybody else. So within the very nature of class, we have race also that plays a massive part. You could be a billionaire, and like Kanye West says it.
Yeah.
You know, you still a what did he say? What was it? He's still a nigga with my bad. He's still a what he says.
I remember From All Falls Down, but I also heard something else where it's like I can't remember who said this, but essentially he said that when a white billionaire and a black billionaire meet, no one's talking. They don't care about race then, because economically they're on the same level.
They might not care about race, but society cares about race.
I know
the police care about race. Everyone else cares about race.
I do agree, but you realise that if we're talking about the divide and conquer aspect of it, if people are on similar social, economic, financial levels, their primary thing isn't to argue about we're two different races. You know what I mean? Because they've got more in common by other things, which is money or status, that plays a bigger impact anyway.
But yeah, I guess so. There is that argument as well, but there's also the argument to say that people unite on there's old money and new money.
Sure. Yeah,
okay, you've got old money, new money. So if I'm a billionaire today, you've got billionaire families which are largely kind of holistic and they look the same and they are the same and they operate the same. They are from old money.
Yeah.
So there's so many instances of things being said, etc., where they don't want new money to go in and taint their country clubs and their establishments, etc., etc., etc.
I don't know,
and even
JP Morgan.
Yeah, and if they do accept someone, it's one person, it's a token, it's someone isolated, it's solitary, it's just one person. Like, does that make sense? It's not a whole group of people. So you can give one person, allow that one person to be a billionaire, but that one person or group of people or a growing middle class doesn't still reflect wider society. Does that make sense?
It does, and it actually leads me to another point and another question. So let's take it away from like the old money, new money, and let's talk about money in general and just the use of it in the communities. So one of the things to talk about is gentrification. Excuse me. And the idea of how there's certain boroughs in London, for example, Brixton, which are predominantly being occupied by black people and people of minorities. And then we have this kind of new buildings coming influx of Sarah from Kent or whoever, right, come in and people build in stuff like that. And I noticed that there's certain areas in London, let's say, for example, Southall, which is in West London, predominantly Asian, all the businesses there, Asian, property, etc. Do you think there is a higher level of unity when it comes to things like that in, say, the Asian community than over the black community? And why do you think that is?
Yeah.
But why?
So, again, there's a direct answers. And I think we have to be careful about classifying the Asian community as this one homogenous group.
I'm just speaking in generalities just for the purpose of the example. Yeah,
there's nuances, and even if we look at the nuances here, not too far from here, in Aldgate and Whitechapel, where you have a very, very high South Asian, specifically Bengali community, and their community has been there since the 40s and the 30s. If not, there's remnants of that community even before that period of time. And they're still here. You still get people, Sarahs and whoever else from wherever else moving in, but the community is a lot more close knit. They stay. And there's a saying in the black community which don't sell grandma's house.
Okay.
Yeah, don't sell grandma's house, because grandma's house is the cornerstone of the family. It's the cornerstone of of that particular community. It's the cornerstone of everything. It's the central hub. It's the HQ. Once you sell grandma's house, because usually you're going to sell it, and the person that's going to buy it, and we see this in Walthamstow, we see it in Brixton, we see it in places like Kilburn, Peckham, etc., etc. When you sell grandma's house, grandma usually had that house since the 80s or the 70s or the 60s. So grandma paid for that house over a period of time, bought it for whatever, cheap, low price, etc. When you sold that house, usually a person coming in is going to buy that house, but they're not from that particular area. They're from somewhere else. Sure. So they buy that house and they hold on to it, they keep it, etc. And the house price goes up, goes up, goes up. What happens to that family is that close-knit unity that they had of grandma's house being the HQ, that goes. Everyone disperses. That whole family is dispersed now. So then what you see, you're going to say something?
No. Go.
So then what you see now is that road after road after road, house after house after house that used to have a, large African, Caribbean, people from African descent presence, that's gone. Okay? Because people, we don't want to stay in the places that we come from. We want to move out.
But then what about from a position of reinvesting? Because there's a reinvesting back into the community.
To us.
Yeah, so I guess us.
We want to move out. We don't want to stay in Peckham or Brixton or Tottenham or Hackney, because those places are synonymous with maybe trauma, maybe growing up in the ends or the hood or the ghetto, etc. So we want to run.
But you don't have to stay in the community. But I'm saying reinvest in the community.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that would be good. But it's not happening. We're not doing it. Our main thing is to get far away from ourselves, from each other, from who we are, our community, as possible. Because the community, and if you look at it like Brixton, if you look at even Tottenham, as soon as people are able to move and get a bit of money that they can move and buy a house, they don't buy it in Tottenham, they buy it outside in Enfield. And if you almost get a flight of people going from Tottenham, for example, to Enfield. And then now what you see happening in places like Tottenham Hale is that you see people moving in. We're trying to leave, but people are moving in. And we're moving further out into zone 4, zone 5. Yeah. And people are moving from further afield, outside London, into zone 3. Because when you look at these areas, Brixton, Peckham, Hackney, Tottenham, Kilburn, Harlesden, Neasden, all these areas that are undergoing this gentrification, they're all what? They're all zone 2 and zone 3. You see? Do you see how London's town planning or city planning is weird? It's not like the France context where France's low socioeconomic areas are in the outskirts and the suburbs. In England,
the suburbs
are in the city centre. That's why you have inner city community. Did you hear that? Inner city communities, they're usually the deprived, blah, blah, blah. It's in the inner city. And you have that in places like Manchester as well. Moss Side's not far from the city centre. You have it in places like, a lot, not Nottingham, etc. The bad places of Bristol, for example, St. Paul's and these places, they're not far from the city centre. So where we were placed, where we came, was not far from the city centre. And there's a push to get, for us to move out or to get us moved to the outskirts.
Yeah, because that's what's happening, of course, at the minute when we talk about that kind of concept. Is the fact it's cheaper to buy. I suppose let's say it's cheaper to buy land where somewhere there's issues, right? There's crime, etc. So they're going to try and push people out who are living there, by increasing their rent, maybe in some cases, and then obviously building new buildings, etc.
Exactly, and then you get so with gentrification you get this redevelopment and displacement. These are some of the concepts that go with it. Okay? So this, and you see it on Top Boy. Top Boy is a great example of these ideas, and that's why I like Top Boy so much. Shout out to the Top Boy team, because it's not just one of those dramas where you have drugs, guns, and gangs. You've got immigration, you've got gentrification, you've got social issues, you've got mental health, you've got postnatal depression. You've got so many things that affect people in society encapsulated in that show. So shout out Top Boy. But yeah, what I was saying about gentrification and redevelopment and displacement. So you get council estates that have been plagued by crime since they were built in post-war 60s and 70s. Okay?
Tottenham,
Boardwalk Farm,
They've got quite a history, to say the least.
Yeah. And there's loads of other estates like that. You got estates like that. You got estates in Brixton like that. You got estates in Northwest London. You got estates all around Hackney. And what happens is that there's such a case for these places to be knocked down that you don't even need to make a business case. What we need to do is look at the look at the stats, look at the history. There's a case for them to be knocked down. And everyone would say, yeah, that needs to go, it needs to go, it needs to go, it needs to go. So when it goes, what happens? The developers come in and they build, nice, modern high-rises, new builds. And there's an allocation for those new builds to social house, it's not always social housing, it's what's the name of it? It's affordable housing.
Yeah, it's like a preference to people who've been there first, but it's only a certain amount.
Yeah. But it's not social housing, it's affordable housing.
But it's not affordable.
We
live in London, nothing's affordable.
Exactly. This is my point.
Yeah.
So it's not social, it's affordable. Social housing would suggest that its social housing rates are really, really cheap. But to get around that, what they will say is affordable housing, but it's not affordable for the people that live there. It might be affordable for people coming from, I don't know, whoever it is, but not for the local community, for the people that live there. So what happens is only a small allocation is for affordable housing, maybe 5%, maybe 2%, maybe 1%. So what happens to the rest of the people that lived in that old block? They get displaced and they get sent out to wherever. And if they don't accept it, what happens? You've made yourself compulsively.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So do you see where the gentrification comes with redevelopment, as in redeveloping the area that's crime-ridden, and then that redevelopment then leads to displacement. So then we have a whole transformation of a specific area, which is under the guises of gentrification, but there are two wings to it. There's displacement, and then there's the redevelopment end.
And that's all of those are bang on points as well, and it kind of makes me think about. You kind of know what you're talking about, huh?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. It kind of goes back to a little bit of what I was saying about the idea of unity in finance. So these places that you're describing, these estates, for example, they're rented or they're social housing. So I think I personally believe there's definitely a lack of ownership, especially like in the black community as well.
100%.
And I think with ownership comes a degree of power, like we spoke about earlier. If people own certain things, business, etc., in the area, obviously you have more of a say in what you can do. Do you think that there's something? Why is that? I mean, you're not a representation of everyone, but I'm saying, why do you think there's such a displacement that way? Because ownership, you have more rights, right?
Yeah. Within the gentrification concept, there's still more rights, but there's still something called compulsory purchase.
Okay.
So compulsory purchase is a purchase. It's a concept from the local authority or the developers where we're buying it, and you need to accept.
That sounds like muscle, like.
Yeah, it's compulsory purchase, bro.
They just turn up one day and they're like, "Come, it's my house now.
I mean,
it's my house now, my guy. No, you don't need this house. You don't need this house no more, my guy. No, you don't need all these houses, all these rooms. Nah, not for you, my guy."
Colonialism.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
Colonialism, capitalism, the two C's, man. So we won't get into that today, but
well, actually, speaking of the C's, so some of the things you mentioned is about sort of social justice, right? And I don't have an issue with the word social justice. I don't like the word social justice warrior. And the reason why I say that is because that's usually tied to cancel culture, right? And I think cancel culture it's not really a real thing, right? But people use it as a pretense to then go on a social justice mission. We kind of live in a generational world at the minute where you can't really have an opinion.
Yes.
Unless it agrees with the masses.
100%.
Therefore, that's an opinion. And it's just bonkers to me. I mean, I've been cancelled many times.
Seriously?
No. Yeah. Mostly just for saying stuff which is like...
And who
the thing where I said to you about the man?
Yeah. So I'm probably going to get cancelled.
Cancelled.
As by sitting next to you, by default, I'm
by
cancelled.
Association.
Why didn't you tell me?
By association.
I wouldn't have come
you
on the show.
You might as well be sitting next to Andrew Tate, mate. That's it. No, I'm joking. Not that bad. Jesus Christ. But I think there's just, the social justice. I'm always a bit skeptical about that, only because I think that people play it in a way where it's just virtue signaling.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of an overlay and, it goes into cancel culture and stuff like that. So Do you think they intertwine in any kind of way, or do you think I'm being paranoid?
Cancel culture and
social justice and how they intertwine. Because there's some people who are just saying stuff like saying just for virtue signaling purposes, just to say, oh yeah, it's like
I think with cancel culture, people should, and this is the issue with cancel culture and the issue of multiculturalism and the issue of, well, not even multiculturalism, that's another issue, but issue with, or the false label of multiculturalism, that's another issue, but the issue of cancel culture and political correctness.
Okay.
Yeah? Political correctness. Sometimes I don't want you to be politically correct. I want you to say that which you mean.
But people don't behave like that.
I know, but I want you to, because then that's when we're able to have a discussion and a dialogue. Okay? Because what you see is that there's a level of political correctness in the streets, in the workplace, in the schools, in the universities, in the academia, just as a whole. But then when you go into the comment section of LinkedIn, of Facebook, of all these things, that's where you really see people's true colours. But I don't know who you are because you're hidden by a computer screen and a weird little picture emoji.
And it's funny. It's funny you say about the comments is that, so you know, these blog pages, for example, you have people talking about everything, right? And I work with some people who do podcasts, and sometimes I suggest guests to them. So when they're in their comments and people are thinking so strongly about stuff, I'm like, you know what? We're actually talking about this topic on a podcast. Would you like to come on? No, I'm shy. You're not shy. You're not shy, man.
You just don't want to be baited out for your
at least what you're
bigoted right wing views.
Right.
But you're still gonna have them.
Yeah, but the thing is, people are entitled to have a view and opinion. But I think that it's just about, like you're saying, having an open discourse.
Yeah, but are they entitled? Are people entitled to have a view and opinion that is wrong, that is incorrect, that is biased, that is racist, that doesn't actually really exist? I don't know. But then is that me then trying to
convince someone of your opinion,
convince someone and colonize their almost colonize their opinion potentially? But then truth is truth, right? So truth should
now. There's no my truth
and your truth. Yeah, and your truth. There's no infinite truth. Yeah. But that's actually there's something called postmodernism, which is it's a theory by someone called, not just someone, but someone called Michel Foucault, and he's a postmodernist scholar, right? And one of the things that he says and other people say is there's no such thing as an absolute truth. Right?
Okay.
There's no such thing as absolute truth. And this is where this whole discourse or dialogue around your truth and my truth and no absolute truth, that's where some of these things come from. These are academic scholars, academic writers discussing things and writing things that you now see 20, 30 years later in the society and in the streets.
So is that a basis of the truth is
relative?
But isn't that based on, like, it's only truth if you can back it up? Almost,
no,
right?
Not even. It's relative. It's if you see it as the truth, if you think it's the truth, if it's the truth for you, then it's the truth.
But that's wild. And I say it's wild because people say it about anything. This is my truth. You can say this is my experience. I understand that completely. But this is my truth and I'm speaking in my truth.
Yeah.
Shut up, man. Like, that's all rubbish.
Cancelled.
That's all rubbish, man. I don't care. You know, at your host Rob on the socials, if you've got something to say. But they'll just hide in comments. You know what I'm saying? So I think when it comes to debate, especially, I think people put too much emotions in debate.
100%. I think not just debate, I think history, I think everything. People, and I think that's one of the things that I want especially like my talking tour.
I remember you speaking about this actually.
Yeah.
How taking almost the emotion out of it and let's look at it from
factually, because so much of what we understand about things are based in our emotion. We form emotional connections to, I might as well say the start of the speech again. I've said it so many times. But yeah, we form emotional connections to things, to people, to narratives, etc. And then we try to look for the evidence to drive or to fuel our emotion rather than looking for the evidence to drive the truth, to drive our own narrative. Does that make sense? And that's the problem. That it's so fixated on this emotional aspect rather than,
you know what it is? It's I feel instead of I think. That's what it is. And people you can't. It's that, like saying about debate and disagreement. I think debate or arguments are essentially another person trying to convince you to believe in their argument.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, and people think the only way to win is by accepting or agreeing with the other person's argument. But that's not the way to win. The way to win is understanding that you might think and feel about something. I might think and feel about something. I'm not trying to convince you. I'm saying this is my opinion on it. This is what I think about it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I think like this about it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I don't think like that, but okay, I can understand.
And I think one of the even going back, even based on debating or having a debate with someone, I think there are flaws within that in itself, because it's not necessarily about what's truth or what's the truth. It's about who can make a more compelling argument for their argument.
Yeah.
And about who is oftentimes the best orator, the most clear orator, and the person who in today's instances has the most clout. Those are the three things that it's about.
Clout's a hell of a drug.
It's a hell of a drug. I've seen it firsthand, you know. And it's very, very, and you know, you got to do it for the love, not the likes. But the likes can be addictive, man.
I know. Well, that's a whole other conversation. But like we mentioned earlier, you are an academic scholar. So you also have a book coming out to back up my terminology. So you tell me a little bit about the book.
I think that's a reach, man. Academic scholar. Don't know about that. I don't know about that, man. I would say it's I'm embarking on an academic journey.
Okay.
I would say currently at Birkbeck University, Birkbeck University of London, where I'm studying and researching race. Studying and researching ethnicity, diaspora, and culture.
Okay.
And the book coming out is called The Others We Became.
Okay. Exploring
Race, Identity and Belonging in Post-War Britain.
Okay. And when will it be out? Roughly. Soon.
Soon, man. Soon.
Good, yeah.
Soon. Coming out soon. Working on the final draft now. Once the final draft's out, kind of we've got publisher and all that stuff ready, publicist. So when that's done, yeah, we shouldn't be a long lead up time. So either December or January, I'm aiming for. I can't wait, man.
Yeah, it's the first book.
First book. Yeah. First book.
Nervous?
High pitchedness suggests that I am a bit nervous. Yeah,
I'm fine.
Do you know what it is? It's me coming out my comfort zone. But even doing this is coming out my comfort zone.
How have you found this?
It's difficult, man.
Is it difficult?
Yeah, you got lights coming down on you. You got cameras.
Shoot me, man. Shoot me in a room.
It's everyone else out there. But you know, like I was saying to you earlier, when I'm giving lectures or presentations or speaking in particular places, I find that a lot easier than doing this. But this is good. I'd like to do it again, 100%. So maybe you can have me on after the book. Yeah. Maybe next year. Or maybe if I say something controversial.
What about we'll put you on a panel show with some people who have got some opinions? I think that'll be good.
Yeah, that would be good, man.
Because I think you can speak well with your points and articulate it.
Thank you.
Where, you know, people won't get offended if
Thank you.
Listen.
Yeah, it's about diplomacy. I think I'm quite a diplomatic person. I think I get that from my dad. Charismatic, etc. You know. Yeah.
Good looking, all that stuff. Right?
But yeah, no, I think I'd love to do that. And I think it's like I said, I think it's about, this is not my comfort zone. Me posting on social media is not my comfort zone. If you know me, like know me, you would know that I went through a bit of a insular type of looking into myself period for about a couple of years, man. Where you go on my social media, I had nothing on there. My LinkedIn, no posts, nothing, because I was trying to figure out, after the kind of COVID situation and being in a professional work environment like we've touched on before, I was trying to figure out who am I, what do I represent? If I'm gonna come out into the world as somebody, it needs to be the person that I really and truly authentically am. Because once you put something out, i.e. the book, once you put a video out, i.e. this, can't take it. It's been seen. Can't take it out. Can't take it back. And that's what and that's why, in terms of the book, man, I've been really, really, really careful about how I write it, when I write it, and even what I'm writing it about. Am I really passionate about that type? Because obviously, I can, in 10 years, 5 years, I can do a side step and say, you know what I said was, I didn't believe anymore. But I don't really want to do that. I want to see it as a natural evolution. So if my opinions on things change, if they become more nuanced, or I do some more research and I find something out completely different, that's fine. It's a natural evolution. But I don't want to be this situation where I'm retracting back statements. I don't want to be able to. I don't want to do that. I want to stand on my principles, and I want to, what I'm saying now is what I mean, because at the end of the day, I'm a grown man.
So what you say about principles, it would be really good to know. Do you live on a set of core principles, and if so, what are they?
Yeah, I live on Al-Islam. Yeah, that's my core principles. Yeah, Islam. Yeah, that's my principles. Being respectful, being humble, modest, being a good person, treating everyone like I would want them to treat me. Being respectful, I've said that already because it's really important. To be honest,
mentioned, yeah,
it's really important, man. And just trying to be a good person in every space that I'm in, and being hyper conscious of, like I said earlier as well, what legacy, what message do I want to be left behind? If I go tomorrow, what do I want to be known for, and what do I want people to say about me? And I've made some mistakes in the past. This is where it starts getting sentimental now. I've made some mistakes. I've said things. I've hurt people. I've done some things that I'm not proud of. But we grow, don't we? And like we were saying earlier about that lack of male role models and trial and error and coming into yourself and becoming a man and going on that kind of journey, I would say I've gone through that, and I'm still going through it now. None of us are finished articles. None of us master this thing that they call manhood or masculinity. None of us master it, I don't think. I feel like we evolve, we develop, we grow, and we learn new things constantly over and over and over again, and we just get refined and better at doing it. Like as a husband or a father, you're constantly growing as a husband, as a father.
You pass the lessons on.
And you pass the lessons on to our children. And hopefully our generation, the generation under us, our children's generation, won't have to kind of go through that thing that we went through. Does that make sense? So that's kind of the aim of the game, really, man. But yeah, I'd love to come on a show again. I'd love to do a panel. I'd love to hopefully get some good feedback from the book when it comes out. It's not a comfortable thing. It's uncomfortable, to be honest. But the more you do things that are uncomfortable, the more comfortable you get.
That's where it grows,
and the better you become. Yeah. So it's just about taking yourself out of the comfort zone, which I'm doing. And I'm actually enjoying the process, man. Yeah. I think more than anything, I'm enjoying the process. So
it's a journey, man.
Yeah.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
100%. And who said it? I'm in love with the process. I'm in love with the progress. I'm in love with the process or the progress. Someone's song I was listening to recently, or I heard it recently. I think it was Heady One.
Okay, yeah.
He said he used to be in love with the money. Now he's in love with the process or the progress. Yeah. And it's the truth. Like, I love the growth. I love seeing how, for example, even Diversify, man, like there was a time where nobody knew it. No one. Just me. It was just an idea in my head.
That's crazy. When it's an idea and it's out there and people
literally like I remember it being October, and I can't remember, a couple of years ago, and I was sitting with my friend who I used to work with at the time, and I actually bought a domain name. It was called diversity.tech, because that was what the website was going to be called, diversity.tech. And he was like, shout out Irvin, you know who you are. And he was like, diversity.tech, not sure. Diversity.tech, not sure. And he was like, started going through some names, and then we kind of said, what about Diversify? It's like, right, yeah, that's not bad actually, that's quite good. So to go from there, and to go from no one knowing you, like ignoring your emails and your in-mails on LinkedIn, to the point where you're now getting called into, Plymouth University, you're now getting called, and you're now getting feedback from a dean of a university, and them saying that, if you want a compelling history of this, blah blah blah, this is your guy. That means a lot, man. That's humbling. Yeah, man.
It was good. Listen, man, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. If we could just get all of your socials, and also
100%,
where we can get in contact with you if anyone wants to.
Now?
Yeah.
Cool. So email address, get me on hello@WeDiversifyTalent.com or Romain@WeDiversifyTalent.com. Social media, Instagram, it's Romain Mohammed _, and the LinkedIn is Romain Mohammed. Just search me. There's a yellow banner. My website www.romainmohammed.com. I think that's it. What else did you ask for about?
What about the LinkedIn? That's where all the juice is, man.
The LinkedIn,
all the
man.
Juice.
Yeah, yeah.
All LinkedIn is where the juice is. That's where I'm gonna go, man.
Romain Mohammed. I think it's just Romain Mohammed. Yeah. Just there's only one Romain Mohammed.
There is, and there's only one YourHostRob. Make sure you like and subscribe, guys. Of course, you need to give me a follow on all the socials. YourHostRob. We'll be back again soon. Don't forget to drop a comment down there. Leave a little message of what you thought. Anyone who's got wild comments, like we're saying, we're ready for the smoke. Well, I am at least, anyway. All right, guys. Catch you next time. Peace.